The town I'm currently residing in has been designated as a redevelopment area a few years back, and since then, there have been construction sites popping up everywhere around the town. I woke up one morning earlier than usual due to all the noises coming from the new construction site in front of our house. I looked out the window and saw a gigantic yellow crane. I figured our luck had run out and we'd be dealing with noise pollution for a while. It was, however, kind of strange that they would start working at such an early hour of the morning. The noises, as expected, comprised of motorized tools and lots of shouting by the construction workers. It was quite loud and I wasn't happy at all, but my parents could care less about it. I thought maybe they quickly adjusted to all the noises. A few days had passed and I was walking home from work late at night. I stayed late at work to finish up a project and I was extremely tired. My only priority was getting home fast, so that night I decided I was going to take the shortcut through the construction site. I noticed something odd as soon as I entered the site. You see, the spot where the yellow crane was supposed to be was empty. Actually, the entire construction site was devoid of any sign that there was any construction going on recently, as if the site had been abandoned for several years. A cold shiver ran down my spine and I ran through the site faster than I had ever run. When I got home, Mom was still up, so I asked her what happened to the construction that began a few days back. She looked at me incredulously and said, "What crane? And what construction site?" That's when I realized why she hadn't complained about the noise. Mom continued to explain, "The last time the construction site was active was when you were still working in Miyagi. There was a terrible accident one day. A crane had collapsed on a group of workers and 3 of them died instantly, getting crushed by the crane. Word this, the construction company paid off the local politicians and the media because only a handful of media outlets covered the story and it was forgotten very quickly. The construction came to a halt the next day and it's been that way ever since." Mom went to bed after telling me the story, leaving me to wonder what I had been seeing and hearing over the last few days. What did I actually see then? Was I seeing the spirits of the deceased workers continuing their daily grind even after death? I could still remember the shouts, the noises, the faces of the workers at the construction site, but now everything is gone. I no longer see them or hear them, and it's as if my knowledge of their death had erased their existence in my consciousness. My grandpa told me this story a few years ago. He's 71 today, and the story goes back to when he was 30 years old, so that would make the time frame of the happening around the year 1986. At the time, he lived in a small farming town of 20 families in total. They used to have an artificial reservoir, which was made primarily for irrigation purposes. There were some unpleasant rumors surrounding the reservoir, and depending who you spoke to, it was considered either an urban legend or the real deal. The thing is, there are some historical evidence that the reservoir was built on top of an execution ground that was used by the Japanese colonizers back in the days when Korea was under their rule. In any event, the town had 2 roads that connected the homes, farms, and the main freeway. One of the roads was the longer path which went around the town, but it was wide and nicely paved. Then there was the narrow dirt road, which connected the farms and the houses directly, but it was built right next to the reservoir, so you had to be extra careful when taking that path. There were several accidental drownings after the reservoir path was opened, so most people chose to take the longer path for safety. One night, Grandpa was coming back from a friend's party in the next town. It got dark very quickly, so he wanted to go home as quickly as possible. So, with his bravado bolstered by the alcohol in his system, he decided to take the shorter reservoir path. Not long after he passed the mouth of the path, a heavy fog started to set in. He was right next to a large reservoir, so he figured it's something that could happen naturally. Even so, he was spooked by the atmosphere. He coughed a few times in a futile attempt to diminish his fear. It didn't work. He took out a cigarette and put it in his mouth, but now the fog was so thick that he could hardly see the tip of the cigarette. Then he lit the match, but it quickly fizzled out, even though there wasn't even a hint of breeze. Terrified, he stopped in his track and sat squatted, hoping the fog would clear. He tried lighting the match again, but the blaze quickly fizzled out again. It felt like he was sitting there for hours, and he couldn't even check the time because he was not wearing a watch. His legs started to hurt after enduring the cramp for God knows how long. That's when he noticed the fog dissipate, and it was completely gone in a matter of seconds. He lit the match again, and this time it stayed lit. He scanned his surroundings, puffing on his cigarette. When he looked to his right, his heart sank when he saw the reservoir right next to him. Had he taken one step further towards his right, he would have fallen in, and no one would have been there to help him. Scared out of his mind, Grandpa ran to his house like he was being chased after by a madman. He was bedridden for several days, traumatized by the experience. He moved to another town 5 years later and didn't go back to his old town until a decade thereafter, when an old friend had a death in his family. When he went back, the old town looked very different from the place he left. Everyone but 2 families had left the town, and the reservoir had been filled up with dirt. It had become a ghost town, and even the 2 families still living there were planning to move out the first chance they got. Did the reservoir have anything to do with the downfall of the town? Grandpa doesn't know, but he told me he was glad he wasn't there to find out. I have a brother who used to be the biggest jerk and loser in the entire human history. He used to drink every night and pick fights with random strangers for absolutely no reason. Everyone in our town hated him. Why wouldn't they? He would scream like a maniac and throw anything he can get his hands on his way back home in his nightly drunken parade. To make things worse, he wouldn't stop until he became sober. His tirade would often last hours, and the local police despised him. But for some unknown reason, my brother became a completely different person since last week. He stopped drinking, comes home right after work, and has good attitude towards people. I sat down with him yesterday and asked him what brought on the sudden change. He didn't want to talk about it and told me he felt ashamed to tell me. I told him if not me, then whom? I'm his brother. He lit a cigarette and started talking. About a week ago, I'm at a bar drinking like the world was coming to an end the next day. I'm being obnoxious to other customers, and so the owner of the joint kicks me out. But what can I do? It's not like I'm going to fight the owner of the bar where I drink every night. So I'm walking back home, and out of anger, I'm screaming and just doing what I normally do. Some 20 minutes later, I'm only a few steps away from our home, but I really want to take a piss. I walk towards the wall of a neighbor's house, balance myself against the wall, and let my pecker free. I'm way too drunk and can't piss. I wait and wait, then get bored and look up at the sky, waiting for the flood, when a woman's face appears from the other side of the wall. She is looking down at me, and I'm thinking, is she staring at my penis? I scream at her, "Fuck off, bitch. Is this the first time you've seen a cock?" Just seconds after saying that, it comes to me. The woman who's looking down at me isn't supposed to be alive. She's Mrs. Lee, your friend's cousin's mom, who died almost a month ago. I'm sobered up instantly and scared out of my wits, so scared that I can't move a muscle. Then she suddenly grabs a huge chunk of my hair and yanks it back and forth violently. I scream like a madman, but of course it wouldn't matter. This is what I do every night. No one's coming to help. After a struggle that felt like it lasted an eternity, I get free from her grips and take a hard tumble. I get up and run like the wind. All the while I'm thinking she's following me. I managed to open the front door and went inside my room right away. I couldn't sleep the whole night and tried to remember everything about Mrs. Lee. I remembered she was one of the few women in town who had the balls to confront me when I was drunk. There was this one time when she told me she'd kill me if her son failed his midterm because I kept him awake at night. Back then, I cussed her out, and I remember taking a piss on her wall every night for almost a month. The next day, I went to her house and apologized to her husband and son about my past indiscretions. I also carried several buckets of water and cleaned their walls, freeing it from the stench of my piss. I behaved like a decent human being from that day, and she hasn't shown up since then. You reap what you sow, I guess, and I'm just working to redeem myself every day, because if I don't, maybe she'll come back and I might not be so lucky again. My brother got up after finishing the story, picked up the 3 cigarette butts off the ground, made sure they were put out, then gently tossed them in the garbage bins. I don't know if he was too drunk that night and imagined everything. In fact, I don't really care. I'm just happy for him and for my parents that he's finally changing his ways. South Korea has mandatory military service for all male citizens aged between 18 and 35. The 1950s war between the armies of North Korea and South Korea ended with a truce, but the two nations are still officially at war. The Korean Demilitarized Zone is the buffer zone between North and South Korea. It is the meeting point between the two nations. This is a story told to me by my brother about an experience he had while he was in the army stationed at the DMZ. There are lookout posts every 100 meters throughout the 200-kilometer long border between South and North Korea. Every lookout has claymores strategically positioned for defensive purposes. A claymore is an ambush explosive device which fires steel balls into the kill zone like a shotgun. The model we used was wired to a trigger button in the lookout towers that switched the claymores between on and off state, and we could even set it off remotely from the lookout. It is an extremely powerful and dangerous weapon. We were allowed to have it armed only during emergency situations, so for the most part, it was never armed. To be honest, if it were up to us, the soldiers, we would leave it armed throughout the year. If not for tactical reason, it would at least give us some peace of mind. But historically, there have been many instances of defectors crossing the border, so keeping it off made sense. I was assigned night shift with exactly 2 weeks to go before my long-awaited discharge from the army. I was a sergeant by then and was put on a watch duty with a private one night. I certainly am not proud to admit it, but like most sergeants expecting discharge in a few weeks, I was too complacent and lazy. I slept on watch duty and had Private Jin do all the work. I must have slept for a couple of hours when Jin woke me up from my sweet slumber. "Sergeant, sir, they're coming." Dad woke me up in a second. I scanned beyond the wire mesh fences for the enemy, but saw nothing. "Do you want me to kick your ass?" "There's nothing," I shouted to the private. "No, sir, I swear I saw." The private sounded puzzled. I said to him, "Don't freak out and keep a cool head," then proceeded to close my eyes again. I was trying but couldn't fall asleep because Jin kept insisting there were people in white clothes walking towards us. I opened my eyes again, but there was no one in the area. Frustrated, I told Jin, "In what country do soldiers wear white uniforms at night? In summer of all seasons. Stop freaking out and shut the..." My rant was cut off by the sound of an explosion, then another one, and another one. It was the Claymore going off, not just one, but three. Thinking the private must have armed it, I screamed at him, "Have you gone completely nuts? Why did you set off the Claymore?" The private had a petrified look on his face and said, "Sir, I swear to God, I saw people in white clothes approaching our location, and I didn't set the Claymores off. I only armed them, sir." We radioed HQ and proceeded to comb through the area of the explosion, but there were no bodies to account for the explosion, not even a dead animal. The next day, I went to the armory to pick up 3 replacement Claymores. They are expensive, so you normally get yelled at pretty good when you set them off accidentally. I told our commanding officer, "Sorry sir, Private Jin set off the Claymores by mistake." Strangely though, he wasn't angry at all. He handed me the Claymores and said, "Multiple Claymores were set off at lookout 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, and 28. You are not the only ones who've come for the replacement today." Lookout 23 through 28 are quite a distance away from our lookout, but even so, I would have heard the explosions had I been awake. Maybe the explosions were what made Private Jin so jittery initially, but it still didn't explain what set off those Claymores. I still wonder today what Jin actually saw that night.